Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastoma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Please join us in chanting the verses of the Bhagavad-Gita chapter 12, verses 1 to 10.
Arjuna Uvacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhakta Swam Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharamauvyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vittamaha Shri Bhagavanuvacha Maya Vesha Mano Ye Mam Nityayukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetaha Te Me Yuktatamamataha Ye Tvaksharamanirdeşam Avyaktam Paryupasate Sarvatra Gamachintyam Cha Uthasthamachalam Dhruvam Sanniyam Yendriyagramam Sarvatra Samabuddhayah Te prapnuvanti mameva sarvabhutahite rathaha kleshodhigatarastesham avyaktasaktachetasam avyaktahi gatir dukkham dehavadbhiravapyate Ye tu sarvani karmani Mai sanyasya matparaha Ananyenaiva yogena Mam dhyayanta upasate Tesham maham samudharta Mrityu samsara sagara Bhavami nachirat patha Mayyaveshita chetasam Mayyeva mana adatsva Mayi buddhim niveshaya Nivasishyasi mayyeva Atha urdhvam na samshayah Atha Tam samadhatum na shaknoshi mai sthiram abhyasa yogena tataha mamim chaptum dhananjaya abhyasepya samartosi matkarma paramo bhava Madharthamapi karmani Purvan siddhimavapsyasi.
Bhagavad-Gita is a manual that teaches humanity how to face the challenges of life without losing the invaluable mental peace. How exactly are we able to maintain the serenity, equanimity, composure when we are meeting the difficulties, challenges that life offers? Remember, human beings are loaded with incredible potential, ability. The corporate world tend to use the word human resource, which is actually a misnomer. It is actually human potential. We cannot reduce people to the level of material resource. It's human potential. So human being, people are potential to create prosperity, happiness, success, whatever that you want to achieve. So we are loaded with incredible ability, but we don't know how to use it. When we are not able to use, or when we don't make that effort to use the abilities and potential that we have, when we are in our deep slumber and don't realize what we are worth, what we are capable of, the nature has a way of unveiling your potential. When you don't consciously discover your ability, talent, potential, the nature has a way of revealing or unveiling your potential. And that is called problems and difficulties of life. Problems and difficulties come to you only within what you're capable of handling. The world, the universe doesn't offer problems beyond your ability. So we got to understand that the challenges, problems are a message from nature. When we don't discover our potential, the nature keeps pushing us around. The world kicks us around until you realize, my God, there is something that I need to realize. Problems cannot be, the life cannot be without problems in life. Remember, nobody achieved success in ideal conditions. Nobody. You take history of anybody who made an impact in the world or made an impact in their own life. It has always been in adverse conditions, difficult conditions, challenging situations. When we have the right attitude, that will give us the right perspective. Then we begin to see that problems are meant to reveal your potential, your ability. Life cannot be without problems. Difficulties not necessarily crush you. If you approach it, if you perceive it properly, if you have the right mental disposition to see it in the right perspective, difficulties will actually make you. It won't crush you. But if you don't have the right mental disposition and the right perspective, difficulties can bog you down. Remember, kites rises against the wind, never with the wind. A man was flying a kite, and the kite was reasonably steady. There was steady wind, and the kite was so, smoothly floating in the sky. And a boy came up and asked the man, "Why are you holding the kite?" And just to teach a lesson to the young boy, the man snapped the string. And what happened? The kite was floating around in the wind for a few minutes, eventually fell down. It is the wind against the kite that is holding the kite right on top. If there was no opposing wind, kite would have fallen down long before. When the planes want to take off to higher heights, the aircraft always takes off against the wind, never with the wind. So is life. If you want to grow high, both spiritually or materially, don't expect it to happen without challenges and difficulties. All that we need to do is to understand the wisdom of the Bhagavad-Gita. And that will give us the right mental attitude, mental disposition, and then you have the right perspective. Remember, when Arjuna did not want to wage the war, Kurukshetra war, to establish dharma, righteousness in the country, when he wanted to run away from the battlefield, what did Krishna do? All that Krishna did is empowered Arjuna with the wisdom of the Bhagavad-Gita. That's all he did. Arjuna was looking at his challenge of waging the war from a very selfish, egocentric perspective. As a result, he was bogged down by anxiety, stress, and all kinds of psychological problems. With the wisdom of the Bhagavad-Gita, Arjuna was able to change his perspective from selfish to unselfish, from the microcosmic point of view to macrocosmic point of view. And that inspired him. So the only problem that we have is the way we see the problem. We don't see the problems as an opportunity. Remember, when our mind is weak, every situation becomes a problem. When your mind is weak, even the slightest of pinpricks in life becomes a huge problem. When our mind is strong, when our mind is matured, we are able to see the problems are not really a problem, it is actually an opportunity. I remember a few years ago speaking to a gathering in India. It was a company, corporate, a pharmaceutical company. So we were having lunch together with the managing director of this company, and a couple of other directors also were sitting in the same table. And the managing director, the CEO of the company, was talking to one of the other directors in some context. He said, when he went to Australia for a business trip or holiday or whatever, he came back, he imported a dog, a unique breed of dog which wasn't easily available in India. He could afford it. He paid a fortune to get it. He really liked that particular breed. He brought it. And a month later, he was very disappointed, disheartened. Why? Because the dog was disabled. The dog cannot bark. What's the use of a dog which cannot bark? And one of the other directors sitting across his table turned to him and said, listen, you can make a better use of the dog which does not bark. Then the CEO said, what do you mean? How can I make a better use of the dog which does not bark? Then the director said, put a plaque on your gate which says, beware of a dog which does not bark. The thieves will be even more careful, isn't it? Here is a situation where one person sees a problem. In the same situation, somebody else sees an opportunity. Opportunities and difficulties are simply depends upon your perception. The knowledge of Bhagavad-Gita, if you approach it diligently, sincerely, consistently, with Shraddha, as Krishna discussed yesterday in the second verse, it will give you that right mental disposition. But the problem today, two things. One is we look at Bhagavad-Gita only as a religious text. Number two, those people who read the Bhagavad-Gita expect an instant result. They don't have the patience and perseverance to continue the study until the wisdom gets crystallized in your mind. They don't do that. When you have the wisdom, you will realize that you are able to connect the dot. If you go back to 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30 years ago, what you thought was a problem then, now you are able to connect the dot and say, my God, that was an opportunity. That changed my life for the better. But when you are in the problem, you are not able to. But when we have the wisdom, you are able to understand that these problems that I'm facing may have a positive consequences later. There is an old Indian fable that is often discussed, not only in the spiritual parlance, even general parlance. It is a story of a minister, a king and his minister. It's a popular story. Many of you must have heard of it. There was this great king, and he has got a very dear and a very wise and noble minister. They're so close to each other, they did everything together. Except sleeping, they ate together, and the king really, really trusted the minister. And this minister had a peculiar characteristics, that is, a very wise characteristic rather. Anything happens, good, bad, indifference, he would say, that is also for good. Oh, bhi acha hai, that's also good. Aduvum nandru in Tamil. Everything is good. That was his characteristic expression, whatever happens. As a result, he was so composed. The biggest tragedy or the biggest fortune, he was so calm and composed in his disposition. And this didn't really matter anything to the king. So king, not that he concerned about what he's saying, so he ignored it, let him say what he wants. But on one occasion, what happened to us? The king met with a freak accident, and the king lost his index finger. And when that accident occurred, the minister, in his characteristic disposition, said, that is also for good. Oh, bhi acha hai, that's also for good. And this, the king didn't like it. He was furious. He was upset. I lost my finger. And you're saying that's also for good. How can you say that? The king was irritated and furious. And he dismissed the minister. You will cease to be my minister. Sacked him. King was calm and composed. He wasn't perturbed. Then also he said, that is also for good. Oh, bhi acha hai. And he walked out of the palace. And few days later, the king realized that I think I have been too harsh, but his pride did not allow him to call the minister back. But the life went on. A couple of months went by, his wound got healed, the cut finger. You know, the finger is lost, of course, but his wound is healed. So one of the pastime that the king and minister used to do was they would go for hunting together. One of their hobbies. So now the king had to go into the forest for hunting all by himself. The minister is not there. So king was proud that he doesn't want to call the minister back. So he decided to venture in the forest all by himself. And then he lost his way in the forest. He didn't know the direction, where he came in, and he was totally lost. And eventually, the forest dwellers, bushmen, caught hold of the minister, caught hold of the king rather, because the king alone was in the forest hunting. The forest dwellers caught hold of the king, and they took the king to their king. So they decided to make a human sacrifice as their peculiar strange prayer. So they wanted to make a human sacrifice to please their God. So before they made the sacrifice, the king of the bushmen told them, before you make the sacrifice, examine the body. Make sure that he is complete. He's not a damaged piece. And as they examined the body, they found that he lost one of his fingers. Since it is a damaged piece, as it were, he lost one of the fingers, they decided not to make this human sacrifice. They decided to let the king free. They let him free. And it took him several hours for the king to find his way back. Somehow he traced his way back to the palace. And when he came back to the palace, the first thing he did was he summoned the minister. And the minister came next day. And the king profusely apologized for his rash act of dismissing him. I'm so sorry. I did not understand what you meant when you say that is also for good when I lost my finger. The fact I lost my finger then, yesterday, that saved my life. And remember, when the king dismissed the minister, then also the minister said, that is also for good, and walked out. Because if minister was not dismissed, he would have been accompanying the king. With the king has to go different places on different times for hunting. The minister would have been accompanying the king, and minister would be the object of sacrifice. So the fact that the king dismissed the minister saved the minister's life. What we need to understand is that not to look at the problem from a narrow perspective. Don't look at the problem with the magnifying glass. Look at the problem from a totality perspective, from a cosmic perspective. When you look at the problem from a cosmic perspective, you will realize that that problem is actually an opportunity. Charlie Chaplin, the great comedian, is also a philosopher, said, in life, when you see problems from a narrow shot, from a close-up shot, it is a problem. From a long shot, it is an opportunity. It takes wisdom. to understand that. Otherwise, everything that we do is actually a big headache, is a mountainous problem. We don't realize that the times of stress are actually the signals for growth and progress. The times of stress and pressure are actually the indication, if you perceive it properly, they're all signal for growth and progress. You can use the adversity, challenges for your growth. But that will happen only when you have the wisdom. And there has to be a certain amount of consistency. There are people, they study the Bhagavad-Gita very casually when they get time, if at all they get time. That is not it. There has to be a consistent investment of time, especially in the early hours of the morning, Brahma Muhurta. Then you find you develop that wisdom and attitude. You know, there is something called lobster theory. Lobster theory is, as you know, lobster is a soft fish, or if you want to call it fish, or let's say it's a submarine animal, soft and mushy animal that grows inside a very hard and rigid shell. Once the shell is formed, the shell does not grow. But the lobster inside the shell grows. The shell doesn't expand. So when the lobster, the soft and mushy animal, grows, it feels confined. It feels the pressure. So when the lobster feels the pressure, what it does is that it gets away from the water, in the main water, and go inside somewhere rocky terrain to hide itself and let go its hard shell. It casts off its hard shell and it remains there until the new shell is formed. It remains in the rocky terrain where the predatory fishes don't come. It hides itself until the new shell grows. And once the new shell that is formed, and the shell doesn't grow, right? The new shell is formed according to the size of the what do you call this, lobster. So the new shell is formed again. The lobster grows, it still feels the pressure, it still feels the confinement. And when the lobster feels the pressure, confinement, again it withdraws into the rocky terrain, hide itself, cast off the shell. New shell is formed, bigger shell, and the lobster is comfortable inside. And over a period of time, the lobster grows, again it feels the pressure. It retires. Cast off the shell, forms new shell. This the lobster keeps doing. Now the question, ladies and gentlemen, is that what is the motivation for the lobster to grow? The motivation, the incentive, the stimulus for the lobsters to grow is that it feels the pressure. It feels the confinement. It feels the uncomfortable feeling inside the shell. Then it goes into the rocky terrain. Similarly, when you feel the stress, pressure, you can use that as a stimulus for growth, provided you have the wisdom. If you don't have the wisdom of the Bhagavad-Gita, These mental pressures, worries, and anxiety will bog you down. It will crush you out of existence if you don't have the wisdom. So the difference between happy people and unhappy people is not that the happy people don't have problem. Of course, they do have the problems, perhaps much more than the unhappy people. But they have the wisdom to know what to avoid, what to endure, what to withhold and grow. But most people get knocked down by the pressures and they are not able to rise up again. You know, life is like a boxing match. You know, in boxing match, as you know, in boxing match, defeat is declared only not when you fall down. Defeat is declared only when you don't stand up or when you're not able to stand up. They'll give you 10 seconds count. If you're able to stand up, you can fight again. If you're not able to stand up, that is when defeat is declared. So in life, it is not how many times you get knocked down that matters. Every time you get knocked down, you wake up with a renewed optimism, renewed strength, renewed enthusiasm. And that renewed optimism and enthusiasm and encouragement will not come from a feeble mind. You got to have a mature, strong mind. That is where the message of the Bhagavad-Gita comes in. But people of the world are too busy. They're too impatient to invest time, or they're too busy that they don't find the need for studying the Bhagavad-Gita or any spiritual literatures for that matter. There are countless examples in the history of humanity, in recent times or ancient times, when people had the wisdom that gave them the right mental disposition and the right perspective, they were not bogged down by the challenges or even catastrophe. One such character was Thomas Alva Edison, as you know. It was on the evening of 1914, 10th December 1914, about 5 p.m. in the evening. This legendary scientist, one of the greatest inventors of all time, never was there an innovator as profound as Thomas Alva Edison. Edison had about 1,300 inventions to his credit. One man. He patented about 1,300 inventions. He was known for his persistent consistency and determination to pursue what he wanted to pursue. When he was pursuing to discover the light bulb, he failed many times, but he never perceived that as a failure. He said, 999 times I learned how not to make light bulb. He never said, I failed in making light bulb, but he pursued persistently, consistently, insistently until his mission was accomplished. And there are so many other inventions that he patented. So on the 10th December 1914, in the evening about 5 o'clock, as he was sitting in his office happened to be in the same premises where his factory was. He heard a thunderous explosion in New Jersey. It was in New Jersey in America. When he heard this huge explosion, he got up and peeped out of the window. He looked through the window and he saw the spectacle. His entire factory was engulfed in conflagration. He's on fire. He couldn't believe. His entire lifetime investment that he earned, about $22 million at that time. You do the arithmetic, what would be the value of that $22 million today? And as this factory was burning, what is noteworthy is that he was so calm and composed. He was so serene in his disposition. That's a true story. And as the factory was burning, he called his son, Charles. He was still in his early 20s. His name was Charles. Charles, come here. Where is your mother? Tell her to come and see this. Tell her she will never be able to see anything like this rest of her lifetime. While the whole factory is burning. And the wife came and she also saw the spectacle. Needless to say that she was, flabbergasted. I mean, beyond imagination what has happened to this husband's investments. Next day morning, media approached him and asked him, how do you react to this? And his response was, thank God it happened. I can restart all over again. That's all he said. Thank God it happened. I can restart all over again. And he did it. At the age of 67, he is not in his 20s and 30s. At the age of 67, Thomas Alva Edison, his entire lifetime investment is burned down, gutted into ashes. And he restarted all over again. And today, you have General Electric, one of the huge global corporation. He started this when everything was lost. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what I would call facing the challenges with composure. It takes a Thomas Alva Edison to respond to that. But most people may not have that kind of situation where your entire lifetime investment is burned down to ashes. Generally, most people, yes, this kind of challenges do come once in a while. When there is a huge challenge, a tsunami of emotion engulf you. It's possible that can happen, but it doesn't happen very often. Our day-to-day challenges are so small pinpricks of challenges, we are not able to face it. One of the reasons is that we have an expectation in our mind, life is without problem. If I were to give you a definition of life, what is life? If I were to give you a definition of life, life is a continuous solutions to problems. Where there are no problems, there is no life. There is only one generation of people in the world who have no problems at all. You will find them in the graveyard. What that means is, so long as you have problems, thank God that you are living. See, the problems of life are designed to lift you to great heights if you approach it properly. Once there was a man. He was watching a butterfly struggling to come out of the cocoon that it was confined into. The larva is placed in the cocoon and eventually it forms butterfly. And the butterfly was struggling to come out of the tiny little hole. And man was sitting and watching. And he was so compassionate about seeing the struggle of the butterfly. In his misplaced compassion, what the man did was, he went to his house and brought a pair of scissors, and he clipped the cocoon and made the hole slightly bigger so that the butterfly can come out of the tiny hole easily. And yes, butterfly emerged out of the hole easily because it expanded. The man helped the hole to be expanded. But then what happened to the butterfly? The butterfly moved around a few times around the cocoon and eventually died. In his misplaced compassion, what the man did not realize as to why the universe has created that struggle for the butterfly, is that when the butterfly is struggled to come out of the tiny hole, it is nature's way of helping the butterfly to ooze out the excess fluid that is stuck in the body. When through the tiny hole it struggles to come out, the excess fluid that is stuck in the body, stuck in the wings, etc., oozes out, and the body becomes lightweight. It can fly easily. But the man did not realize that. In life, challenges are like that. If you approach it with wisdom and right mental disposition, it makes your weight lightened to fly great heights. But what do people do? They try to run away from the challenges. Most people want to escape from the problem. They want to run away from the challenges, like exactly what Arjuna did. Arjuna wanted to run away. He didn't want to face the challenges. He told Krishna, please, I don't want to fight this war. He laid down the weapon while he was preparing to wage this war for 13 long years. And when the zero hour, when the opportunity came, he was overwhelmed with emotion, incapacitated to fight, laid down the weapon and said, let's not fight, let's go and meditate. I remember about 12 or 13 years ago, when I was in Mumbai, I was living with a family in Andheri. And I was going for morning walk, some of the small streets and by lanes. And I encountered a very strange spectacle. It was run up to Diwali season. In Diwali in India, much before the Diwali day, people start bursting crackers. Not like here, you are allowed to burst crackers for 2 hours, which is okay, the right thing to do here, all right? So some of these mischievous children, what they were doing is that, not that I enjoyed watching this spectacle. I felt sad watching the spectacle, but there's nothing that I could do. The mischievous kids. So what they did is they caught hold of a donkey. And with a long string, it tied a metal container and tied it onto the donkey. And they light a cracker and threw the cracker near the donkey. And when the donkey heard the bursting sound of the cracker, out of fear, the donkey started running away. And when the donkey starts running away, it's dragging the metal container behind. And as you know, on the concrete road, when it's dragging the metal container, it makes the thud-thud noise. The donkey believes that the noise is following, and the donkey runs and runs and runs. Even after the cracker noise is stopped, the donkey is still running because the donkey believes that the problem is following. The donkey didn't realize all that it needs to do is to stop for a second. The moment the donkey stops for a second and turn back, there is no problem. It's only the tin. But the donkey runs and runs and runs, believing that the donkey is running to escape from the challenges. But the more the donkey runs and escape, the more problems follow. This is the way with life. There is one set of people, vast majority of the people, they try to escape from the problem and they don't want to face the challenges squarely. I had at least about a dozen people calling me to say that they want to escape from South Africa. Last month when they had this, riots in this country. Out of fear. If you're running away from the country out of fear, remember, you will never ever be free from fear, because that fearful mind will continue. It is the mind that is causing fear, not the environment, not the country. It is your mind that is causing the fear and anxiety. So with that fear, if you run away from the country, you can go to UK, you can go to Australia, you can go to America, Canada or India, wherever it is. If you escape out of fear, your mind will follow wherever you go. You will be afraid of something or the other, just like the donkey. That's why we call the animal donkey. And what do you call people who escape from the problem and thinking that they'll be safe? I don't know what to call them. You decide. When the challenges comes, we need to do two things. We need to have the patience and perseverance to invest time and absorb the knowledge. Reflect upon it, and that will give you the right mental attitude and see that problems have a purpose. That is exactly Bhagavad-Gita tells us. So in this 12th chapter with 20 verses, one of the very important element of is bhakti or devotion. As I've been mentioning to you, bhakti or devotion is very narrowly understood. Most people understand bhakti is only an external paraphernalia of religious activity, which of course is one element. As Krishna said, it's a form worship. But then form worship is also useless if you don't understand the science, the significance behind it. Just because you mechanically perform a havan or perform a ritual or whatever, nothing is going to happen if you don't understand the science or the significance behind it. So in the 6th verse, he said that we discussed yesterday, those who worship me, worship God, worship the supreme reality, renouncing all action, surrendering all the action to that, and regarding me, the self, the Atman, the Brahman, the supreme reality as the ultimate, meditating on me with single-pointed yoga. What happened to that person? Let's understand verse 7.
Teshamaham samudharta, Teshamaham samudharta, Mrityu samsara sagarat, Mrityu samsara sagarat, Bhavami nachirat partha, Bhavami nachirat partha, Mayyaveshita chetasam, Mayyaveshita chetasam.
Tesham, meaning for those, for them. Teshamaham samudhartha, mrityu samsara sagarat, meaning for those whose minds are set on me, meaning those whose minds are set on divinity, the supreme reality, God, or if you can't conceive the supreme reality, relatively speaking, those whose minds are set on higher values of life, nobler principles of life, Teshamaham samudharta, for those whose minds are set on me, aham, meaning Krishna says, I, samudharta, Krishna becomes the deliverer. He delivers you from what? He says, mrityu samsara sagarat, meaning from the ocean of death-bound existence. This existence, this world that we are caught up in, he says, it's an ocean of death-bound existence. For those whose minds are set on me, the supreme reality, God becomes Erlong, or Partha, or Arjuna, deliverer from the ocean of death-bound existence. Now, Bhagavan Sri Krishna compares this existence as an ocean because it's endless. Just as in the ocean, when you are in the middle of the ocean, it is vast sheet of water all around. Any direction you look, it is only water and water and water. And you don't know which direction, you don't know which is east, west, north, south. But then, since you are lost in the ocean, in the boat, without knowing which direction is where, then you have a compass. As soon as you look at the compass, you know the compass always points towards the north. One look at the compass, you know which is north. And as soon as you know which is north, you know the south, east, west, and many other directions. Northeast, southwest, and whatever other directions you have, you know all the other directions. Similarly, when you are lost in this quagmire of perceptions, emotions, and thoughts, and going through struggles and challenges of life, All that you need to do is to pause and take an about turn and look within, that conscience within. The conscience always points you towards the right direction. It can never falters. We are in the ocean. If you don't look at the conscience, we'll get lost. We don't know which direction. Now, this ship in the ocean analogy is a complete analogy. A boat in the ocean. There is a captain. Captain symbolizes our rationality, our intellect. When the captain looks at the compass, the captain knows which is north. Similarly, when you hear the call of the conscience within, it tells you what is the right direction. But if you want to listen to the call of the conscience, suddenly when you wake up in the one fine morning, you can't listen to the call of the conscience. You got to do your spiritual sadhana to be able to listen to the call of the conscience within. The captain and the conscience you need. And remember, it is not the water outside that is a problem. The ship will sink only if the water gets inside the ship. So long as the water is outside, you can make use of the water to sail through and reach the shore of immortality. And in that ocean, there are giant waves representing the huge challenges. And below the water, such terrible submarine animals like sharks and other wild creatures. If you stick to the boat, you are free from all those challenges. Similarly, if you stick to the literature, the Shastra or spiritual sadhana, you will be you'll be free from the affectation, persecutions of pains and suffering that you experience. For those whose minds are set on me, I become erelong, not too long, O Partha, O Arjuna. Partha means another name for Arjuna. The deliverer from the ocean of death-bound existence. Mrityu samsara sagarat. The word samsara is an oft-quoted word in the Vedantic parlance. Samsara means samsarati iti samsara, meaning that which keeps changing is samsara. The world keeps changing. The world that you saw today is not the same world tomorrow, a few weeks later. It might appear same. If you take a picture, if you took a picture of yours few days before and take a picture now, you don't see any difference. But if you take a picture 10 years ago and look at the picture today, you'll see that everything changed. It is continuously changing, but we may not be able to notice it. That is samsara. You know, in samsara, when we believe that the problem is with the world, you keep trying to solve the problems outside. And the more you try to solve the problem, the solution is only a creation of a new problem. Every external solution that you find, that solution is actually a creation of a new problem. If you don't believe, ask married people. Don't ask newly married couple. They'll think that it's rosy. Of course, marriage is a wonderful institution, no doubt. It is one of the most happy, enjoyable institutions, provided you know the value, you know the reality. If you don't, it can be a challenge. So in order to escape from all the challenges that adolescents go through, and they believe, okay, once I get married, all my problems will be solved. But as soon as they realize, as soon as they get married, they realize that they get into a permanent problem. And you find a solution. Solution is, okay, difficult marriage, divorce. That is another problem. Now, once there was a saint, a sadhu. Now, he was, he set up a kutir, a little hut for himself to live his spiritual life. And he would wake up early morning, about 3:30, 4 o'clock, and start his spiritual sadhana, meditation, Veda mantra chanting, etc. And he would wake up so early. As he woke up and about to, chanting the mantra, and he wanted to meditate. As he was about to meditate, there was a problem. The problem was there was a little mouse coming and biting the wood, and that crick noise was disturbing his concentration. And he tried to chase the mouse. It comes back again. Chase doesn't, solve the problem. So what do? He thought about it, and he thought, okay, the best thing is to bring a cat. Got a bright idea. So he asked his disciples to bring a cat. He brought a kitten. And the kitten grew within, a few weeks and a month later, it grew enough size to disperse the mouse. All right. Now, mouse did not come anywhere near the kutir, in this hut, but there is a cat. So when the sadhu sits for meditation, the cat goes on, meow, meow. The rat problem is gone, but there's a new problem. There is a cat, because the cat wants milk. So where do you get the milk? So in order to supply permanent source of supply of milk, the sage thought, okay, best thing is to get a cow. He brought a cow. But then cow, as you know, is a high maintenance animal. It's a wonderful animal to have in the house. Many households in India, even now, regardless of rich or poor, there are many in the rural places, even wealthy people have cows in their house. It's an ancient tradition. Lord Krishna was a cowherd, all right? It's all deeply philosophical, symbolic. So the sadhu decided, okay, get a cow. He got a cow, but then cow is a high maintenance animal. So he was mending the cow many hours in a day. So he's not able to practice his sadhana. So he decided, okay, in order to take care of the cow, best thing is to get a maid, a lady to look after the cow. Yes, he got a cow. He decided what the salary is going to be, etc. To a lady to look after the cow. But time went by. A couple of months later, the sadhu ended up marrying the lady, got into permanent problem. He thought mouse is the problem. In order to solve the problem of the rat, he brought the cat. In order to handle the problem of the cat, of milk problem, he brought the cow. In order to look after the cow, he got a maid. And then it goes on. This is called samsara. Samsarati iti samsara. Yes, of course, you got to change, but you got to understand that if you are unhappy with any challenges that is encountering you, it is not created by the problem outside. It is your reaction to that problem. Yes, you solve the problem, but solving the problem will not increase your happiness, because the moment you solve comes another. That's why you find scientists in the world thinking that there is a problem. So they solve one problem, create another problem in the environment. And they went on solving one problem after the other for several decades now. And the problems have increased so much, they don't know where to stop now, because they're only solving external problem. They did not solve the internal problem. The only problem is the problem with our mind, with our desires and ego. So long as we don't realize that, we get caught up in this samsara. And then he continues in the 8th verse. Mayyeva mana adatsva.
Mayi buddhim niveshaya.
Mayi buddhim niveshaya.
Nivashishyasi mayyeva.
Nivasishyasi mayyeva.
Atha urdhvam na samshayah.
Atha urdham na samshayah. In order to liberate ourselves from these continuous, ever-changing world, come with its challenges and problems, how do we save ourselves? Krishna gives us a very important practical exercise here. He says, fix your mind on me. Mayyeva mana adatsva. Fix your mind on me alone. Place your intellect in me alone. You shall no doubt live in me hereafter. You only need to do 3 things. What is this? Fix your mind on me. Place your intellect on me. That's it. Very simple. At the moment, our mind is fixated upon the world, believing that the world will give happiness. And our buddhi, our intellect, rationality is continuously generating ideas to echo out happiness. And we go on. So he says, pull the mind from there and place it on God. The God of your understanding. You can call whatever that you want to call. You can call Krishna, Vishnu, Rama, Shiva, no matter what it is. Fix your mind on me. Place your intellect on me. When there is a confluence of manas and buddhi, mayeva mana and my buddhi. Fix your intellect, buddhi. At the moment, our intellect is constantly planning and scheming and manipulating how to conquer this, how to defeat that businessman, how to poach his employee, how to poach that man's business. This is what our intellect is constantly planning and scheming, how to win one more contract as you are a businessman. Yes, you continue doing that, no doubt, but understand that all that will eventually must lead to the highest purpose of God realization. Fix your mind on me, place your intellect in me, you shall no doubt live in me hereafter. No doubt. No samshaya, there's no doubt about it. Krishna is giving us that 100% guarantee that there's no doubt you will. Fix your mind on me, fix your intellect on me. But then, that's very easy to say. But how many people are able to do that? What happens is, when there is an amalgam between heart and the head, when there is a confluence of head and heart, mind and intellect, emotionality and rationality, that is when your personality is inspired. Now, this verse is not only talking about the highest pursuit of God realization, this verse is also talking about how to achieve your relative materialistic goals. Even to achieve your materialistic goal, you need that blend, the amalgam of that mind and intellect. At the moment, we are suffering from what we call the cognitive dissonance. That is, the heart and the head is not in consonance. They are in dissonance. They are not in harmony. They are in 2 different directions. Mind wants to do something and the intellect doesn't approve of it. When the intellect says, do this, mind doesn't like it. When your rationality says, listen, you're putting on weight, your pressure is going up, your sugar is going up, doctor told you do some exercise, go for a walk, go for a run, or go to gym or whatever. Rationality tell you, get onto your feet, do some exercises. But the mind says, maybe we'll start on Monday, next week. Monday comes, but today it is a cloudy weather. I don't feel like going to gym today, maybe next week. Goes on. Mind, intellect says, do the exercise, mind doesn't like it. There are other situations, mind wants to eat food, sugar, for example. If you're a diabetic patient, mind loves to eat sugar, but the rationality, intellect says, don't eat it. This is called cognitive dissonance. Whereas, when your head and the heart is focused in one direction, there is Shakti, there is power. But when the head and the heart is diverse and in different direction, it is weakness. So he says, fix your mind on me, on Supreme, place your intellect on me, you shall no doubt live in God thereafter. But not everybody is able to do that. If you are not able to do that, those people who are not able to fix their intellect and mind on God, what is the prescription? Verse 9.
अथ चित्तं समाधातुं
अथ चित्तं समादातुं
न शक्नोषि
न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम् न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम्
अभ्यासयोगेन ततः
अभ्यासयोगेन ततः
मामिच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय
मामिच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय. If your head and the heart are in harmonies, in confluence, in unison, your personality will gain that energy, that Shakti, the power to meet any challenges of life. If you are not able to do that, what is the solution? To them, he says, if you are unable to fix your mind steadily on me, then seek to reach me by the yoga of practice. Or Dhananjaya. Dhananjaya is another name for Arjuna. Dhananjaya means, Dhanam means wealth, Jaya means winner. Dhananjaya means winner of wealth. So if you are not able to keep your mind and intellect constantly attuned to God, the supreme reality, he says, Abhyasa yoga. Abhyasa yogena tataha. By Abhyasa yoga, you can reach me. Oh Arjuna. Arjuna is every human being. All of us are Arjunas. Now, what is the Abhyasa yoga? See, what happens is when you direct your mind upon God, upon Krishna, upon the supreme reality, or the God of your understanding, the mind has a tendency to keep wandering everywhere else. When you direct your mind upon that symbol, that God, the mind doesn't want to keep focused, that it slips into every other direction. And then he says, let your intellect become aware, conscious of it, and slowly, gradually coax the mind to come back. That is called Abhyasa. Practice. Just as when you were learning to ride a bicycle, first time when you got onto the bicycle, these days you have the training wheels, etc. All right. When you are any practice for that matter, any practice to start with is difficult, but when you with the continuous practice, even the most difficult thing becomes easy. So there are many people, they try to focus your mind upon something higher, something nobler, to meditate. The mind is so restless and fidgety, it wanders in every direction like a monkey. When the mind wanders in everywhere else except where it wants to, then what you need to do is bring the mind back, and it'll go again. Watch, observe where the mind is going, and slowly, gradually you bring the mind back. Again, it'll slip. Keep practicing it until a time will come that your mind get trained. Remember, human mind is such that it can be trained and grown till the last moment of your life. Your body stops growing. By the time you reach about 20 or years or so, your body stops growing. All right. Thereafter, the body only grows sideways. But your mind grows your entire life. So you can train your mind. You can grow your mind. So in order to practice, they prescribe certain methods. All right. When the mind, you can coax the mind. You know, the traditional wisdom in India gives us the 4 practices. That is Sama, Dana, Veda, Danda. All right. Sama meaning persuasion. You persuade the mind, just like you persuade a child. When the child is obstinate, it doesn't obey the instruction, you persuade the mind, is persuade the child, giving, or you bribe the child, don't we? You know, sometimes parents sort of bribe the child to persuade to do what the parent wants to do. That is called Sama, persuasion, by explaining or by giving certain understanding. All right, explanation. The second is Dana. Dana means giving, charity. In a way, you bribe, you tempt the mind. Give something. You know, when the you just as like you train an animal, even train the child. child, you do something, you give something. All right, you sort of bribe. That is dana. And then third one is bheda. Bheda means division, or you exploit the weakness. All right, when there's a weakness, you exploit it. All right, for example, if there is a temptation for a particular enjoyment, you exploit that. And then danda is the punishment. The mind doesn't behave. If you don't behave, I will not give you food. Or if you don't behave, I will cancel the ticket for holiday. Whatever it is. So that is called danda. So you can use these props and tips to practice abhyasa. All right. So if you're not able to fix your mind steadily on me, then seek to reach me by the yoga of practice. But if you are not able to practice, what is the solution? Verse 10.
Abhyasepya samarthosi.
Abhyasepya samarthosi.
Matkarma paramo bhava. Matkarma paramo bhava. Madharthamapi karmani. Madharthamapi karmani. Kurvan siddhimavapsyasi.
Kurvan siddhimavapsyasi. If you are not able to practice abhyasa yoga, then what's the solution? He says, if you are unable to even practice, regarding my action as supreme, even by performing action for my sake, you shall attain perfection. You know, the beauty, the Catholicity of Bhagavad-Gita is that nobody is excluded. You don't have to be a sadhu. You don't have to be a spiritual person to study the Bhagavad-Gita. Everybody, it is applicable to anybody and everybody, provided you have the open-mindedness to learn from it. All right. If you're not able to practice and bring the mind, then what you need to do is go back. It's like saying, our objective is to get a PhD. All right. If you want to get a PhD, this is the solution. All right. Register yourself and XYZ steps. But if you're not able to do that, then do your master's. If you're not able to do your master's, then you go for undergraduation. If you're not able to then go to school, finish. It's a descending order of inferiority. That is called the progressive ways to reach God realization. That is the topic here. All right. Even by performing action for my sake, what that means is regarding God as the highest. In other words, you divinize every action that we do. Let me do this to the best of my ability and surrender to Krishna. Just as an ambassador of a country is representing the constitution of a country. When the ambassador goes to another country, he's actually representing his country, the constitution of this country. So everything that he does must be in alignment with what the country wants. Whatever decisions he makes, is this action in harmony with the constitution of my country? The moment he does anything else, he'll be called back or he'll be penalized for his action. Similarly, everything that we do, we dedicate to God. All right. The opposite of that is, I am responsible. That ego comes in. Understand that, you know, there is a total scheme of things that is happening, and you and me and all of us are simply a spoke in the wheel. Just as in a wheel, as you see, there are many, many spokes. Not one spoke is more important than the other. Every spoke is equally important or equally unimportant. When we understand that, let me play my role to the best of my ability and get out, shut up and get out thereafter. That understanding, let me offer everything to that Supreme. And then he continues in the 11th verse.
Athaitadapyashaktosi.
Athaitadapyashaktosi.
Kartum madhyogamashritah.
Kartum madhyokamashritah.
Sarva karma phala tyagam
sarva karma phalastyagam
tatah kuruyatatmavan
tatah kuruyatatmavan. If you are unable to practice even this, meaning, what he discussed in the previous was perform action for God's sake, for the as God as your highest pursuit. If you are not able to do that, he says, if you are unable to do even this, then taking refuge in the union with me, renounce the fruit of all actions, self-controlled. All right. If you can't focus upon God and do your action, he says, renounce the fruit of action. Sarva karma phalatyagam. At the moment when we perform our duty, our action, our focus is always upon what's the benefit, what's in it for me, what is the outcome, what's the reward. People cannot do things without calculating what the reward, what the outcome is. Yes, of course, you need to calculate what the outcome is. But while performing action, let your mind not be constantly hankering after, okay, will the result is coming? Will the reward is coming? Will the consequence coming? For the heaven's sakes, simply do your duty. Just enjoy the work. In other words, your desire, greed, or fear are not the factors that are driving our action. But today, most people's activities, whatever that they do, is driven by two emotions. That is greed and fear. They do things because they want to get something, and they do things because they're afraid of not getting something else. The fear and greed drives our action. So he says, do your action, not getting attached to the fruit, the reward, or the result. When your mind is attached to the fruit and working, this is like a cricketer, a batter, batting, looking at the scoreboard. If you keep looking at the scoreboard and keep batting, you'll end up getting all out for 80 runs. If you are unable to do even this, then taking refuge in the union with me, renounce the fruit of actions, self-control. Self-control means let the mind be controlled constantly. The mind is not wandering. Your senses are not dictating terms to you. The senses, the seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, all those sense enjoyment, they are not dictating terms with you. Your ego is not taking control of your action. It is the pure purpose of doing what ought to be done without getting attached to the reward or the result. Just as an actor on the stage perform his role as an actor without looking at the result. The wealth on the stage or the poverty on the stage that is enacting the drama doesn't affect him. All right, renounce the fruit of action. All right, self-controlled. When the mind slips into the fruit, thinking about it, bring it back. All right. So he says, if you are unable to do even this, then taking refuge in the union with me, renounce the fruits of all actions and self-control. Now, most people, a vast majority of the people in the world fits into this category. Do your duty, whether you are running a business, running a profession or a career or a job or whatever. When you leave home, let me do what I'm supposed to do to the best of my ability. Let me not be afraid that will I lose my job. A new employee has been recruited. When a new employee has been recruited, you could have the fear, will I lose my job? He says, if you are able to do what you're supposed to do to the best of your ability without worries, anxieties, and excitement, you are able to perform the duty perfectly, and consequences will be taken care of. Remember, rewards and result. What is result? What is reward? Reward is nothing but present action in a future period of time. It is the action, present action itself metamorphoses into future result. But if you keep thinking about the future result, your present action suffer. That is called renouncing the fruit of action. And then tomorrow, we'll be entering into the most fascinating sections in the Bhagavad-Gita, wherein Bhagavan Krishna discusses how to be a perfect devotee. So when we discuss those 35 qualities of a devotee of God, he doesn't ask you whether how many times you're performing havan, how many times you go to the temple or don't go to the temple, which deities you worship, none of the questions are asked. He says, if you have these qualities, you are a devotee of God. So we'll discuss that tomorrow, 7 o'clock, same place, same time. We'll conclude with the Shanti part. Om Purnamata Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamataya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you.